So for me, equity means giving a student what they need in order for them to be successful. And that does not mean it's the same for everyone.
Exactly. But is the community actually helping you, supporting you when you have these type of situations, like they allow you to do differentiation in the planning or something like it?
Yeah, and it's a team approach.
Mm.
It's there. It all comes back to, right. It's one school, one vision, but many players on the field.
Mhm.
And so it comes back to coordinating with the guidance counselor, making sure he's meeting his
Yes.
credits, coordinating with the principal, making sure you have approval, coordinating with his content teachers. Do they even
Yeah,
know that he works 4 days a week?
exactly.
etc. So I think that yes, it works, but it has to
Mhm.
be with many hands on deck.
And that's a lot of work as well for us. Because if you really care, you really want to actually help, well, it is what it is. I mean, our job hasn't been actually made for just sitting down and do nothing. That's the reality.
True, right? Because we work with humans. We work with
Exactly. Exactly.
right.
That's
Exactly.
very hard. That's very I was actually just talking with another teacher. I think he's in Florida, Jacksonville. Um, he was telling me actually, he was like, yeah, I need to do everything here for the kids, and I love it. I mean, sometimes I have to actually just stop what I'm doing just for them. And that's beautiful. That's a really good story. I mean, if you feel it, that means that you are a teacher like from within. I mean, you feel it. That's your profession.
It is. It absolutely is. I know it sounds like corny, but a lot of people will say, well, teaching is a work of heart, right? But
Yes.
that's the truth. It is a work with heart. We work with human beings. And in the multilingual
Mhm.
learner world, we often get to see our kids grow over time. It's
Yeah,
not a 1 year commitment.
exactly.
It's a commitment of, if they came in as a newcomer, especially, you're typically going to work with that student for many, many years. And even when they exit, the program, according to our state, requirements, when they pass the exams and exit, we still monitor them for 2 more years. And
Mhm.
once they're your student, they're always your student. And then also in our world, we often get siblings, we
Yeah,
often get cousins, we often get other family members that have now heard about the great
coming.
program at your school and they're coming too. They're moving there, right?
Yeah,
Why not? If you brought me to a place and said, where are the good schools for my student to go to? I would go there,
yeah.
and so it's an extended relationship, is what I say, over time.
Yes, definitely. So if you have, I think right now what you're describing the whole thing, the whole community where you are in now. I mean, they're pretty supportive right now, and it feels really good to hear somebody feel supported because that's not the case for many teachers. But if you
Sure.
had the power to change one thing in the education system tomorrow, what would it be?
Ooh. You know, I think the experience that I get to see, at least in the area that I live in
Yeah.
Philadelphia and the surrounding community,
Mhm.
is that all schools would get the same resources, because
Mm.
you could be 10 minutes down the street from where I am right now, and there are students having a very different experience in terms of
Yeah.
resources and exposure to opportunity than kids who are 20 minutes up in another direction. And I'll
Oh.
give you an example. We took some students to a student led leadership conference a few weeks ago.
Mhm.
And my district is an excellent district in terms of we care for kids. We are looking for resources
Beautiful.
all of the time. But we come from a district that is a high need, um, 100% free and reduced lunch, what we
Mhm.
call district, right? Where students are economically in need. And
Of
so the
course.
state does provide funding, right? As well as other
Yes.
sources for us to get funding. However, we went to a different district a little while away. It looked like a campus. Our students were in shock.
Oh my
They
goodness.
they were like, and the first thing other kids say, there were 27
What?
districts represented at this place that day.
Wow.
Why don't we get to go here? Why don't we get these resources? Why
Wow.
doesn't our school look like this? Why don't we have top of the line technology? Right. And it's like, and if I could wave a magic wand, I would give every kid that opportunity to have that type of school experience with
Exactly.
excellent teachers inside of it and all the resources they could ever imagine. Because when students know better, they can do better. And a lot of times it's just they didn't have the knowledge, they weren't exposed to that type
Mhm.
of opportunity because of
Yeah,
where they currently are.
exactly. Now that you said the resources, I mean, that sounds really beautiful there because I always have, well, I always see actually the other teachers that my colleagues that are actually still in the state and they're actually working hard for their classroom, Spanish teacher, English teachers, and multilingual teachers and all that. And all of them are just fighting over there just to clear the list and everything, things that they need and all that. And it's like to support them is really beautiful. But yeah, you just say something that I think not only in one country but worldwide, the resources are really needed.
They are.
And
And to be that close by to another district and see such a stark difference, and as you know, as
shocking.
the educator know that, and then when the kids get exposed to it, to be like, yes, I understand.
Yeah.
I hope that there's a movement in the future to work towards that so that
Yes,
more kids can have equal experiences.
exactly. Yes, I've actually seen it as well, but it's not something that happens only in one country.
No.
Thank God I've been pretty lucky to travel and get to know a little bit more about the educational system in other countries, and I can tell that we're not so different at all.
Mm.
I mean, you go to the States, yeah, you got very good things, but the same thing actually happens when you go to Ecuador, you go to Chile, you go to Argentina, or cross the ocean and go to China or Australia. Quite the same stuff actually happens there. We have districts that have a lot of resources and some other ones that have less. That's like kind of an inequality or something might be in education.
Yeah. I mean, it's like being on a what is that? What is that? I'm trying to think the at the playground, a seesaw,
I
an
see, so
uneven seesaw.
I
It's like it's like being
yes,
on an uneven seesaw. It's not quite balanced. And
exactly.
that would be the hope, is that it could be.
I like that. I like that one about the resources. So, talking about the importance of identity, how important is it in language learning, and how can teachers protect and empower that in the classroom? Identity.
Yeah, I always remind, teachers and say that language doesn't leave a student when they walk in the school doors. And it's something that's supposed to be celebrated, not tolerated. And so, in
Yes.
order to encourage teachers, we look for opportunities to celebrate that identity, whether that be bringing in guest speakers via Zoom or via live in person to talk about their experiences. I do a lot of listening to podcasts, and I listen to Ed Milet, and
Oh,
he often talks about, if you want to know about success on the road ahead, ask the people coming back. And so we're intentional about asking those quote unquote people coming back who are just ahead of our kids all the time. And so that could look like guest speakers. That could look like textbooks in the classroom that are celebrating diverse cultures and recognizing holidays and traditions and experiences, and letting them read about it and talk about it and write about it and connect with the authors of it. That
yeah.
could look like bringing them into your community for community based experiences, to meet with people who look like them, walk like them, talk like them, have experiences like them, are just ahead of them and can give them reflection. That looks
Mm,
like bringing back alumni into your building who have just graduated and doing student panels and letting them talk to your secondary kids or
exactly.
your elementary kids coming up to middle school about what to expect next, what mistakes they may have made, what they would have done differently,
Mhm.
what to make sure they do. Because as educators, we can tell them the same information all
Yeah.
day long. But when they hear it from someone who's just ahead of them, it hits different. And
Yeah.
so I think that celebrating identity and belonging, promoting it within your own building, connecting them to other kids who also speak those first languages.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't even know that there's another sixth grader who speaks Russian or speaks Twi or speaks French. They don't even know they're there,
Hmm.
and so letting them connect, sit and draw together. I had students from Cambodia who speak Khmer, and they
Wow.
were in a couple different grade levels, first grade, third grade, I want to say, in sixth grade. They weren't family.
Hmm.
They had no idea they were all there. And so
Wow.
connecting them with teachers in your building who are also bilingual helps them appreciate their identity. We have a student who is in second grade who is best friends with the custodian, best friends, because
Wow.
she also spoke Ukrainian.
Oh.
And so that became a person in her building that she could connect with every day and go and speak
Oh.
Ukrainian to. And so just looking for those glimmers, I call, of opportunities to highlight, the students and connect them with people, places, and things. I think of representation is important.
True. Yeah. Well, multilinguals. Quick question here in the middle. Do you speak more languages aside from English or something else?
So I only speak one additional language. So which is I speak enough Spanish to get by. And I remember the feeling of being a language learner when I traveled to Salvador. And I traveled to Salvador 3 times to do some work with some schools down there and see some friends. And I had studied Spanish with a friend of mine who's a professor for like
Nice.
a year to prep myself. But I
Wow.
will never forget stepping off that plane. And I was in a place where I say there were no tourists. It was dirt roads and dogs, and I loved it. And there were 8 people waiting for me. And I
Wow.
had to speak Spanish. I had no choice. And I remember that hesitation, and I remember the fear, and I remember the deer in headlights look I must have had. And I had 6 sentences for about 2 weeks that I would say confidently. And that was it. And I was immersed and I was learning and I was picking up more words, right? And I
Yeah.
had to, and I remember getting headaches at the end of every
Mhm.
day. And I remember after about 2 weeks hearing English for the first time. And there was this gentleman, I was walking down this dirt road with the family. We were getting some food. And I
Yeah.
hear literally out of the treetops, I hear, "Hello, beautiful American woman." He said, "I speak English." He's like, "Do
Wow.
you want a translator?" And I was like, yes, right? Because my brain could relax,
Yes.
if that makes sense. I wasn't double
Exactly.
processing all day, double processing, double processing. And I remember that relief. And I was like, yes, please come talk to me for a few minutes because I could finally say so much more. I had so much more to say, just like
Yeah.
I've been talking all this time, that I couldn't. At
Yeah.
that time, I couldn't. And so,
Wow.
yeah, like I have a severe appreciation, getting the opportunity. And I went back 3 times to feel
Wow.
that up to what it was
Beautiful.
like. Yeah,
That sounds really fun there, having a
it
good
was
time
fun.
there.
It really did.
Well, this situation with learning Spanish, it's really tough, I think. I think learning Spanish is really tough. But this experience that you had, for sure, it helps you a lot now in your classroom to identify how the students feel when
Absolutely.
actually just
Absolutely.
in exposure to a different language, in that immersion. For sure you can actually tell when the student start like getting like frustrated, like he doesn't know how to say or what to say or whatever. For sure you can
Right.
identify that.
Yes, absolutely. Because you want to, and again, it wasn't a lack of intelligence.
Yes.
It was just a
True.
lack of a concept. I knew
Yeah.
what was happening. I just couldn't express it yet.
Yeah.
And so I think as an English language learner teacher, one of the myths is often like, oh, you must speak so many languages. And it's like, no, I have 31 represented where I am. And I, the difference is I have a lens. I know what to do, how to
Yeah.
teach someone how to learn a second language. I've been trained to do that, and that's why I can do it, not because I know many other languages. Now, do I appreciate
Exactly.
learning them along the way and using them and,
Mhm.
researching them and having them access for our students when it makes sense? Yes. But do I just sit and speak fluently to them? No.
Well, the thing is that
All right, let's talk about the work of one truly amazing educator. Well, it's the exact question Andrea Bittner has spent her whole career trying to answer. Yep, 24 years. Right on the front lines of public education. She's taught K through 12 students from literally all over the world. And in her incredible books, she makes sure those students' voices are heard. Plus, she shares everything she's learned with educators all across the country. So, what's her secret sauce? It all starts by really listening to the students. And that idea is right at the heart of her first book, Take Me Home. It shares the real, powerful stories of 11 English language learners. Her next book, When Niagara Falls, is all about helping everyone feel like they belong. But, it's not just about the students. It's about empowering teachers, too. Her training actually breaks it down into 3 simple steps for teachers to follow. And her work has practical tools for, well, everyone in the school system. Yeah, she really covers it all, from student resilience to guiding school leaders. She's even a key voice in other big projects, like the book Culture First Classrooms. So, what's all this dedication led to? You guessed it, huge national recognition. I mean, her impact is everywhere, from state awards right up to national stages. It's just an amazing journey that shows what one teacher can do. Which really makes you think, how can one story light up a whole community?
The thing is that one thing is like you can speak the language, and another one is that you can teach the language. I
Yes,
think they're
very
totally
good point.
different.
Very good point. Yes.
Totally different. You know, I'm actually sound very bad in this one, but I've seen so many teachers, they call themselves teachers. They believe that just because they go over there, they know the language, they can actually just go stand up in front of a classroom and say, you know what, this is what we're gonna do today. The lesson is like this, blah, 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 and bye-bye. That's a teacher for them. And they actually give us this pretty bad look to all the educators. Oh my goodness. I think it's pretty bad. And this is something that I would like to highlight as well. If you want to teach a language, prepare yourself. I mean, at least do some research. How will you approach the student? How are you going to help them? How are you going to just tell them, hey, this is the way. Let's go this way.
Well, I think to go back to the idea of assessment that we had talked about before you ever
Mhm.
teach someone, you have to know where their strengths and areas of need are. So you have to know and be trained on what assessments to
Yes,
give them in order to find out.
the
And so,
minimum.
right. And once you found out, then you have to be trained in how to develop a lesson, how to incorporate all four areas, how to address your students' strengths in order of, are they a visual learner, auditory learner, kinesthetic learner? How are you going to engage students? How are you
Mhm.
going to assess students? How are
Yeah.
you going to continue to dipstick those assessments throughout the year to know what you can pull back from in
Mhm.
terms of their supports, right? And so do you know how to access a curriculum? Do you
Exactly.
have a curriculum? Do you follow that curriculum? Do you use assessment to inform your instruction? So, can you manage a classroom? Can you make it an inclusive, low stress,
And that's
you
another one.
know,
Yeah.
right, and input output environment where students are managed well? Because if I teach a college class every other Saturday to future teachers, it's called inclusive classrooms and classroom management. If you can't manage a classroom, kids won't learn.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's so many moving parts to being an educator, and knowing how to do it isn't just that simple, as you mentioned before.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And one of my guests actually here in the podcast says, because most of the educators or teachers, they move actually in this aspect of management, classroom management, just through fear. If you cause
Mm-hmm.
fear in the student, then you're a great teacher. If you
Mm-hmm.
make them feel fear, it's like, oh no, the teacher is here. No, 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 we gotta stay quiet, whatever. Yeah, that's how they do it. That's what they think classroom management is.
Okay. I don't think there's a lot of proof that fear is the best form of leadership.
Exactly.
And I think that feeling respected, giving respect and getting respect is a form of
Hmm.
leadership. And I think that if you have students who are in a constant state of fear,
Hmm.
then physically speaking, they wouldn't be able to have a growth mindset. And at the same time, they would always be in a state of fight or flight.
Yeah.
And that's not always helpful to access the different parts of the brain to help kids learn.
Yes. So now that we have this fear thing a little bit, what can educators do to make sure students don't lose their voice while trying to get a new language?
Well, I think that consistent routines are important. So, providing routines, the content can change, but the routines should be the same. You always see a well run classroom, whether I'm in kindergarten, which I am, or in ninth grade, which I am. You see a well run classroom when eventually it could just run itself. The students know what to expect in terms of the routine of the classroom, but the content and the engagement pieces will change.
Yeah, exactly. So this is something that we need to actually keep in mind, uh, to keep their voices, even though, I mean, do not erase them. They're learning, so we gotta accept what they can actually convey, transmit. Be patient,
Yeah,
right? That's another
student
one.
voice is so important. Giving them an opportunity to have a voice, to use their voice, to practice their voice, in the side of the school, outside of the school, in social situations, academic, emotionally speaking, what type of voice they will need for all of those different expectations is important for them to know how to access and to feel comfortable enough, to share their voice within your classroom. Because as my friend Carlos Ojeda says, like, your voice is your power.
Exactly.
Your
Yeah,
voice is your power, so you want to be able to have that moving forward. That's how you grow into a young adult.
definitely. So what shifts need to happen in both teachers and students for a better environment in the class, to have that what we want, to have the students to learn and teachers to feel more a lot safer, because let's face it, I mean, we sometimes we don't feel safe in a classroom for different reasons.
I think that students have to know that you care. Students have to see you being consistent
Mhm.
with whatever those expectations are, whether they're meeting them or not meeting them. And I think that students have to see that you are knowledgeable enough to engage them with content. And what I mean by that is, years ago, teachers were seen as what we call a sage on a stage. It was like, I am the bearer of all information and I am going to provide it for you. And you are going to listen and I'm going to lecture and you're going to take notes and you're going to memorize this information and give it back to me. Now, this setting is more of a guide on the side. Students are engaged, students are networking, students are collaborating, because the jobs that are expected
Mhm.
here in the States require more of those skills than they do of what was 20 some years ago, where it was a factory worker or someone that's taking
Yes.
notes and an office team member, right? Or a machinist or an educator, right? It was, here's, I'm the bearer of all information and I just need to memorize it and give it to people. That's not the case anymore. You're working in all these different situations where you're required to do all of those other skills with people. So I think as an educator, if you have to be consistent, you have to show your care, and you have to teach kids how to collaborate. And if you can do those things, you'll create a classroom environment that is respected, accepted, admired, and valued.
Yeah. So moving moving on a little bit to the last part of this hour, amazing time. I've learned a lot with you, and I really appreciate that I had the chance to talk to you. So
Capture live precious moments in stunning details with our professional cameras. Unleash your creativity and preserve memories like never before. Visit us now at frameflowcn.com.
so we have a little segment called Myth or Truth.
Okay.
So I got a couple of situations, and I would like to hear you. You tell me,
Okay.
is it myth or truth, and tell me your why, your reason. So simplifying content is the best way to support language learners.
Simplifying content is the best
Yes.
way. That would be a myth, because we are not interested in language reduction. We are interested in
Exactly.
language access.
Nice. So students should avoid using their first language in the classroom if they want to learn English faster.
Absolute myth. I think that the purpose of using their first language is what you should consider here. Even if you didn't know what a student was saying in their first
Mhm.
language, you know what they're using it for based on their body language. So,
Yeah.
for example, if you have students in class who are Spanish speakers, and they are clarifying questions, they are sharing background information, they are asking a friend to further expand on what the directions were that the teacher mentioned. That's one type of conversation I can get behind. But if you have a student who is making fun of another student or yelling something across the room, or you can tell that he's insulting someone, that's a different conversation of using their first language that I would not get behind. So
Mhm.
I think they need to know the difference. And if they, you want to use your language in that capacity to further your knowledge, to gather background information, to share what you know about something, to talk with a friend about directions, sure. But if you want to insult someone, no. So
Yeah.
I think that that's the difference.
Yes. So if a student isn't speaking much, it means they're not learning.
No, absolutely myth. Remember, there's a whole silent period that comes into play that can
Exactly.
last up to a year. And so I think it's very, let's normalize the idea that the receptive intake is happening, the learning is happening sometimes before the extensive expressive.
Yes. So good teaching strategies work for all students. English learners just need more time.
Now, the English learners need an educator who has been trained with the lens to know what to do to accommodate for that lesson.
Now, confidence is more important than accuracy when developing speaking skills.
Confidence is more important than curiosity.
Accuracy.
Oh, accuracy. Confidence is more important than accuracy when developing a
Yes.
speaking skill. I think that there is a way to correct a speaking skill with an approach that is respectful. For example, if you have a student who's making grammar skills that are incorrect at the elementary level, like I have a student that does that. He mixes he and she all the time. He's in third grade. So he'll say, she's walking down the hall, but it's a man. So it's he's walking down the hall. So I'll say to him, "Oh, Ryan, you mean he's walking down the hall?" And he'll go, "Oh, yeah, he's walking," right? So there's a way to correct and connect with that student. Whereas if you have a secondary student who's a little more mature and can receive feedback in a different way, that feedback again, though, is personal. It's not public. It's a bend down at the desk to say, "I noticed you've been using these words this way. I want to show you that this is the way it's supposed to be done." "Oh, okay, got it. Let me show you a few sentences real quick on your paper to refer back to." "Okay, great." It's not a public shaming in front of a class to let that student know that they're incorrect in their speaking skills. And it's repeated practice. You can't grow a muscle without reps. So if you're the only one
True.
speaking, I always say in a classroom, the only one getting better at English is you.
True.
75% of that conversation, of that practice speaking on a daily basis, should be the students speaking. And so, giving that they need the reps, they need the practice. They've got to grow
That's a
the
good
muscle.
analogy there. I liked it, which is true. So,
Yeah.
to get to this, the last point in this set of questions, if English learners are struggling, the problem is usually the student, not the system.
I think you have to explore why they're struggling to make that determination.
Yeah.
And how many are struggling within that grade level or that classroom or that building to make those kind of determinations, because information is power. So you have to gather information first.
True. All right. So, Andrea, is there any question that I totally missed asking you?
No, that's what I can think of. I really appreciate, the time to hear today. I guess I could share where people can find me in case they ever want to
Well,
reach
I was
out.
about to ask you that one, but
Okay.
maybe I forgot something else. No, I hope I didn't forget anything. But please help us. For sure, there are going to be a lot of actual teachers who would like to know a little bit more about you. You do teacher training. I see that you also have this consultancy or something like it in your website. You also are a writer. You got a couple of books. You sent me one. Thank you very much for sharing that one. Maybe please share with all of us how they can meet you, how they can actually just contact you and all that.
Sure. So you can reach me via my website, which is andreabittnerbooks.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Andrea Bittner, or on Twitter at Andrea Bittner. So either places there would be easy to access me. I am always here to help you in any way I can. Like I said, I'm an educator just like you, teaching every day. I'm an author of Take Me Home, which is our true story of 11 students who share what it's like to become bilingual in America, as well as When Niagara Falls, which is a true story dedicated to teachers and students about some of your most at-risk kids in the building. And I get to travel once or twice a month, virtually or in person, in addition to teaching daily, and support teachers on how to confidently accommodate, instruct, collaborate, connect, and communicate with English learners and families.
Beautiful. And how we can you do teach a trainer? Do you have any special workshops for teachers or something like it? Is it in your website as well?
It is. My most requested sessions include 10 questions you should ask when an English learner joins your class.
Wow.
That's a session that's usually about an hour virtually for all content area teachers, pre-K all the way through grade 12. And it comes up with, here are the things you should be looking for, and here are the real solutions and resources to use tomorrow so that you can increase your confidence, communication, collaboration, etc. And then I also do workshops for multilingual learner teachers on how to collaborate with
Yeah.
English language learner teachers, and some keynote addresses and some family engagement workshops, increasing family engagement and participation. So all of that is currently on my website. But if you have something in mind that you were looking for specifically, please reach out.
Awesome. So, okay, so we're gonna have that one, and these workshops are worldwide, right? They're all
They
online
are.
or okay, amazing. So, would you like to give, do you have any specific QR code or something? No, just your website and that's it.
Yes. The website, the AndreaBittnerBooks.com, is the easiest place to reach me.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much, Andrea. I don't want to take more time from you. It's been an amazing time. You you have a wonderful career. Thank you very much for sharing a lot. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job. And hopefully your story can be seen, can be heard as a motivation to other educators, new educators. So thank you very much, Andrea. This is your place. This is your podcast. Anytime that you would like to come and share something, you're more than welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.